Hey, okay, if you do real estate or something similar and want to create content, then check out this automation right here. What this basically does is you give it a URL of a house. For example, in this case, I'm using this house from Zillow. But once we have that URL, then this AI automation will scrape all of that data, like how many bedrooms it has, the price, the size, and all of the images as well. And from all of that information, it'll create a video, and the video structure will be something like this. So first it'll show the front of the house, then the living room, then the kitchen, and so on. So in total, it'll have 6 parts. And it first starts by picking the best images of each part, for example, the best image of the living room, the best image of the bathroom, etc. And it transforms those images into a video. So then once we have the best videos for all of these parts, then we actually create some text overlays. So for example, for the kitchen part, the text overlay might say that it has marble countertops. Or for the bedroom part, it might say that it has 3 bedrooms. And also for each part, it'll add some audio voiceovers. So again, for example, in the bedroom, the text overlay already said that it has 3 bedrooms, but the voiceover part will also say something like, this house has 3 spacious bedrooms and 1 includes a balcony or something like that. And yeah, once we have the video ready, the text overlay ready, and the voiceovers ready for each part, then it'll just merge all of these together, so the text is actually rendered in the video and the audio is actually rendered in the video as well. And once we have all of those final individual videos, then we will just concatenate them into one big final video. So essentially this part is the one that merges and renders out the text, video, and audio together, and this part is the one that actually concatenates all of the videos and also adds some extra music overlay. And before I do any more talking, I'm just gonna test this workflow out so you can see for yourself. And okay, after a couple of minutes, this whole thing just ran, and you can see that we just have this URL, which is the end result. So if we check out that video URL, then you can see the final video right here. In this case, it's about 30 seconds long. It has a real estate logo, it has a text overlay, and of course the video in the middle. So let's just click on play right here.
Discover modern luxury in this new custom estate with gated lot. Living room features soaring ceilings and oversized sliding glass doors. Gourmet kitchen includes Thermador appliances and quartzite waterfall island. 5 spacious bedrooms, each with ensuite bathrooms and vaulted ceilings. 6 bathrooms include a primary suite with soaking tub and dual vanities. Priced at $3,995,000. Contact me now.
So as you can see, everything is lined up perfectly, just the way we want it to. And this is a very cool way of automating content creation for real estate. And in this video, I'm gonna teach you how to create this AI automation from scratch. And also, if you want this exact workflow, as well as the other workflows that I build on my YouTube channel, then be sure to check out our new Skool community called No Code AI Automators. Here you can just go to the AI agents and automation library, click on one of the continuously updated templates that I build, for example this one, and here you can watch that tutorial video that I post on YouTube, and you can also just download it directly, so that now whenever you want to use it, you can just go to the 3 dots here on the top right and click on import from file and just select the file that you have downloaded. We also have an intro to AI automation and agents mini course, an N8N launchpad to learn N8N from scratch, and of course tech support from myself as well as from other members, so you're never stuck in your N8N roadblocks. So basically, if you're really interested in the AI and automation space, then I highly recommend you to join. Right now we have a new limited offer until we reach 100 members, so you can check this out in the link in the description. But anyways, back on track now. Let's actually start building this from scratch. So the first step right here is to actually scrape the Zillow property. Sure, in this case I'm using Zillow as an example, but there's many scrapers out there for any platform you may want to choose. In this case, the one I recommend is called Apify. If you want to scrape something, then this is the place to go. For example, with Apify you can scrape Google Maps places, you can scrape Instagram profiles, you can scrape LinkedIn, and a bunch of more other stuff. Here, since we want to scrape some house properties, then we're going to use the Zillow detail scraper. This will get you all of the information just from a URL, so it'll get the price, the amount of beds, the bots, the descriptions, and all of these details. And of course, it'll also provide you the image URLs. And if you're worried about pricing, then this scraper is actually $3 per 1,000 results. And one of the best things about Apify is that it gives you $5 worth of credits for free each month. So right here, you could scrape around 1,800 properties for completely free. But anyways, the way this works is simple. You just put in the URL right here. In this case, I'm using the URL of this specific property. And after a couple of seconds, you just go to output and you'll see all of the information, like the amount of bathrooms, the amount of bedrooms, the image URLs. For example, in this case, we have 59 images and they're all right here. And yes, that's basically how this automation handles scraping the house. And like I mentioned before, if you have another platform that's not like Zillow or Realtor.com or something like that, then this is still possible, but with another different scraper. Maybe it's not on Apify, but that'll be a topic for another video. So for the next step, let's actually create this first part. And as a first note, we're going to add the manual trigger. So just add a first step and search for trigger manually, because yes, in this case, we're going to trigger manually. But again, you could have another scraper right here that, for example, scrapes a specific list every day, so you'll have like consistent content every day. That's also totally possible, but in this specific example, I'm just going to use the trigger manually node. And after that, just to make this more user friendly, I'm just going to add a set node right here, and I'm going to put the actual house URL. And I'm gonna name this house URL. So this is just for convenience. So if I wanna change the URL, I can just change it right here. But then after this, we actually have to scrape the house. So in this case, there's not really an Apify node available in N8N. So that's why we're gonna use the HTTP request node. And then you just have to fill in some details. In this case, we're gonna use this specific scraper. So just go to integrations, scroll down, select use API endpoints, scroll down again and select run actor synchronously and get dataset items. So just copy this URL, and as you can see, it also says post, so it's a post request. And just go back to your HTTP request, set the method as post, and paste in your URL right here. Now, as you can see in this URL, it actually also includes your Apify API token. And that's not really good practice, because if you add another node, then you'll have to put your API key again right here. So just delete this API token just until the question mark right here. And now you might be thinking, okay, I removed my API key, but how do I actually authenticate with my account? So that's actually very simple, and this is a better way to connect your accounts. So in authentication, we just have to go to generic credential type, and here you just have to select header auth. Then in my case, I already have an account connected. As you can see, I have Google Cloud and Apify. But in your case, you probably won't have your Apify account connected already. So you just need to create new credential. And here in name, just type in authorization. And in value, just type in bearer with a capital B, a space, and paste in your API key right here. And for this case, we're setting it up for Apify. So just type in Apify right here so you can easily identify it, and just click on save. After that, now you'll be able to see your Apify account or whatever you named it in this drop down right here. So just click on it and that's it. So now we just need to set up the part in which we will send what URL we need to scrape. So for this, just enable send body, and for specify body, just select using JSON. Then here you just go back to your Apify scraper, just go back here, and in this toggle where it says manual, just change it to JSON, and then copy this whole JSON and paste it right here into your JSON parts. So here let's take a closer look, and in this URL part is where you will need to put in your house URL. So remember that we just put in the house URL in this set node right here. So to actually map it, you have to execute previous nodes, and now you'll see your house URL. So just change this toggle to expression. Now let's just delete this dummy or previous URL and map in the one that we have right here. So now you can see that the expression is correctly mapped, because beside it we actually see the URL that we had put in. And that's it. So now you have just set up the scraping part. So now you can just click on test a step. And after a couple of seconds, again, you will see all of the information right here. And yes, this is way too much information than what we actually need, because we pretty much just need the address, the price, the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the size, and the description of the house. Of course, apart from the images. So for this, let's just add in another edit fields node and just add a field for each of those variables. So it was address, price, bedrooms, and description. So now you can just map in the information on the left to the right. So for the address, I'm gonna put the actual address, but I'm also just gonna add a comma, and I'm gonna add the city, and another comma, and another comma, and the estate. So that's like a more defined address. Then for the price, I'm just gonna drag in the price. Again, for the bedrooms, I'm gonna drag in the bedrooms as well for the bathrooms. Then for the size, I don't know why, but you have to scroll a bit more down until you see add targets. So in add targets, you'll see a square footage. So just drag that right here. But last but not least, for the description, again, it's not in the top, and I just found it, so you can just map it right here. So now after all of that searching and mapping, you can just click on test a step, and you'll see all of this information that we just scraped, but now more ordered and filtered down. And now we have the whole scraping parts done, so let's move on to the first step, which was to create the actual house clips. So for this, apart from getting the basic house information, we also need all of the house images. So let's actually just go to this Appify call once again and switch to JSON. And if you scroll down, you'll be able to see this huge list of images. So here the images list is set as original photos, and each image or photo is set as caption, but essentially each image has either a JPEG format and a WebP format. And for both of those formats, it has multiple resolutions. So in this case, we just want the JPEG format with the max resolution, which is 1536. And if we just copy this URL into our browser, then you'll be able to see that the house image is right here. So here, again, everything is super messy. So for this, we can add a few other nodes to filter that data. But in this case, I'm just going to use a simple code node. And yes, I know that this video is about no-code AI automation, but for things like this, like data formatting, using the code node is actually super beneficial, especially when it replaces a bunch of nodes. So here we're just going to use a bit of code, specifically some JavaScript code, and it's this code right here. And for your knowledge, I don't know how to code on JavaScript. I just sent Grok a snippet of the JSON of the original photo, so I just copied everything and pasted it into Grok, and I asked it to create some code for N8N to extract all of the images that have JPEG format with the 1536 width or resolution. Then the only thing you have to replace is your actual expression. So in this case, you can just drag and drop original photos right here, and then you can just test the step. Okay, and once you run this whole code node, then you'll get this output, which is the list of all of the images. And as you can see, we have the 59 images, and all of them are JPEG format with the respective width. And if we just copy and paste a URL right here into our browser, then we can see that it's the actual image from the listing right here. So awesome, now we scraped pretty much everything we need, and now it's actually time to process each information, each image. So the first step was actually to create the house clips. Remember that in our case, we're using this video structure. So here we need to pick the best image of the front of the house and animate it, the best image of the living room and animate it, and so on. First, we're going to use Gemini to give each image a description and a keyword. Then we'll send that whole new list to OpenAI, and OpenAI will just pick the best images of each part of the house that was specified, which in this case were these 6, and it'll just spit them out. So as you can see here, we have 59 items that go in, and then we're just left with 6 items right here. So after that, we're just going to use another API to animate the image into a video. So we're just going to use a little zoom in effect, and then we'll just finally change all of the videos into vertical format, so we can share it to Instagram Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and so on. So back in our step-by-step workflow, we're just going to add a loop over node, and we're just using this to process each image individually instead of all of the 59 images at once. And here, as you can see, everything that you want to be looped will go inside this little cycle. So let's just delete this dummy node and delete this and search for Gemini, because we're going to use Gemini to analyze the images. And just wait a minute, because yes, we do have the Gemini model available inside N8N, but unfortunately this one doesn't have any option to input images. So we can't really analyze images this way. And that's why we have to manually call these APIs, which is what we did right here. That's why you can see a bunch of these nodes. And the process goes like this. You first have to actually download the image, then you have to upload that image to the Gemini servers, and then you can finally analyze them. In this case, I used 2 nodes because I want one node to output the description and one node to output the keyword. So let's just do that right here. In this case, I'm just going to add a HTTP request, because if you just set your method as get and put in the image URL right here, then it'll actually download the image. So let's just execute the previous node. nodes. And as you can see, here we're just running everything again. So it's always a good idea to pin the most important nodes. In this case, this node to use Apify and to scrape the house actually costs. So in this case, you can just pin this data with this little pin icon. And what this will do is it'll just keep this information as dummy information later on. So now it won't actually run this whole node again, this whole API again. It'll just use this information that's available further on. So this is a cool way to save some time and to save some money. But anyways, now that this has ran, let's actually change this HTTP request and plug in the URL of the image. And then if we test a step, then you'll see that it actually downloads the image in a binary format. So if we click on view, you'll see the image right here. So far so good. And now let's actually add the next step, which was to upload this image to Gemini. So let's just search HTTP request again. And here you just have to change your method to post. Then for the URL, you have to put in this one right here. And this is just the Google API to upload some files. And then for your API key, you could also just put it beside this URL right here. But just like in Apify that I mentioned, it's not really good practice. So in this case, we're going to use the N8N authentication method. So just click on the drop down, select predefined credential type, just search in Gemini and click on Google Gemini Palm API. And in my case, I already have my account created. So in your case, you can just create new credential. And here you can put in your API key. And the way you can access your API key is by just going to Google AI Studio and then click on Get API Key. Then you can just click on Create API Key in the top right. And here you have to select an existing Google Cloud project to put in your API key. In my case, I already created a Google Cloud project named Gemini API, so I'm going to select this one right here. And if you don't have a Google Cloud project yet, then you can just go to Google Cloud, specifically this cloud.google.com URL. And here in the top left, next to the Google Cloud logo, you see a button like this. And you can just click it and then select new project. So just name your project whatever you want to. If you're just going to use this to create the Gemini API keys, then you can just name it Gemini API. And then you just hit on create and go back and it'll appear in the drop down right here. But anyways, now that you have selected your Google Cloud project, you can just click on create API key in existing projects. And here you'll see your API key, so you can just copy it, but you can view it in your list right here. And once you have all that, you can just go back to N8N and paste in your API key here and click on save. And then you'll have successfully connected your Gemini account to N8N and you can just select it from the dropdown. And then the next step is to just enable send headers. And here just select the using fields below and you have to put in these 4 headers. You can go ahead and pause the video to copy and paste everything. But actually for this whole Gemini flow that we have right here, which is from download image until analyze image, I'm just gonna share these nodes in the description so you can save some time. But then you can just enable send body, set the body content type as N8N binary file. And for the input data field name, you just want to put in the name of the binary data that's coming in. And in this case, the binary data is called data and it'll always be called data for all of the images. So you can just put in data right here. And then if we click on test a step, then you'll see all of this information and you just want to focus on a state and source. If a state is set as active and source is set as uploaded, then it means that your image has successfully been uploaded to the Gemini servers. Okay, and that's awesome. So now let's just go ahead and add the 2 nodes to create the description for the image and to create a keyword for the image. So here again, just add another HTTP request node. For the method, set it as post. Again, all of this will be available in the description, but for the URL, you can just put in this one right here that calls the Gemini 2.5 Flash preview model. And I'm choosing this model because it's the most effective and cheapest one to analyze images. And then once you set up the method and URL, you can just select your authentication. So again, predefined credential type, just search for Gemini. And it'll automatically put in your Gemini account right here. So after that, again, just enable send headers. And for the name, put it as content type, and for the value just set it as application/JSON. Then for the body is where we will actually send the image and the prompt. So enable send body, specify body as using JSON, and then just copy this whole JSON right here. Again, remember that all of these Gemini nodes will be available in the description for you to just download. But essentially what this JSON is doing is, first we're just uploading the image, which is these three parts right here. So the file URI is like the URL of the image that's inside the Gemini servers, and the type is just if it's an image or a video, etc. So for the file URI, you can just map it from here. So it says URI, meme or mime type goes to the type right here. And I know it says image/png, but it doesn't really matter. But anyways, next for the text is where the actual prompt will go. And in this case, I'm just telling it to describe this image in one short sentence. And that's pretty much it for this whole JSON. So now if we test a step, then here you'll see the final output. So in this case, let's just change the format to table. And you can see that it said a modern house with a stone and white, blah, blah, blah. And if we check the actual image, then you can see that all of that description is correct and very detailed. And yep, that was the description. So now I'm just gonna rename it on camera because all of the other notes I renamed it off camera. But I'm just gonna name it give description. And now for the next node to give the keyword, we're just gonna duplicate it, or we're just gonna copy it and paste it right here. And we're gonna rename it to give keyword. So inside this node, everything will be the exact same, but the only thing that will change is the prompt, because now we don't want a description, we just want a keyword. And in this case, we want to put a keyword for each image because we want to filter out the ones that aren't a front of the house, a living room, a kitchen, a bedroom, a bathroom, a backyard. So for example, if an image of the attic comes in, then that will be keyworded as other, and later on it will be discarded because according to our structure, we're just going to use these parts of the house. So that's essentially why we're giving keywords to all of these images. So once you have that, again, you can just click on test as step. And as you can see, it's taking a little bit more of time, and that's because we forgot to pin these nodes. So let's just pin this and pin this one. And now we'll just test this node and everything will run really quick. So as you can see, everything ran real quick. And here we got this image keyworded as backyard. And if we check the image again, we can see that it's correct. So here we can see that everything is working perfectly, and now each image will be tagged as each part of the house according to our script structure. Okay, and now that's basically everything to analyze the images. So here I'm just gonna pin this node as well. And before we continue, I also want to mention the pricing for this Gemini API. In this case, we're using the Gemini 2.5 Flash Preview 0520 model. And while it does have a free tier, it only allows 10 requests per minute. So that's really good for small projects or for testing out. But in our case, we have 59 images to process. So every minute we'll definitely have over 10 requests. So unfortunately, in this case, you do have to go to tier 1, which gives you 1,000 requests per minute. And yes, this is the one that actually costs. But there's some good news, because for this model that we're using, it's pretty cheap. As you can see here, it says input price, it's 15 cents per image. And for the output price, it's 60 cents. In this case, non-thinking, because we're just analyzing some images. And from the tests that I did, analyzing 60 images, giving it a description and a keyword, it just costed me around 30 cents. So that's really, really good. And that's the main reason why I used Gemini for this analyze images step. So yeah, if you were worried about pricing, then that's the facts. And now let's move on. So the next node is just going to be a simple set fields node. In this case, since we got the description and the keyword, then we just want to pair this with the image URL. So let's just type in image URL here, then image description and image keyword. So now each image will have a URL, a description and a keyword. And this is a perfect way to make everything neater for the next steps. So for the image URL, let's just map it from the latest node that it comes from, which is download image. Then for the image description, let's map it from the description from Gemini, which is this one right here. And the same from the keyword, which is backyard. And now if I just test this out, then you'll see that everything is neatly organized with the image URL, the image description, and the image keyword. And after that, for the last step for this loop, we can just add an aggregate node to like kind of merge everything together. So just change the option to all item data into a single list. And in this case, we're gonna call this list image info. And we're not gonna include all fields. We're just gonna include specified fields. And that will be the image URL, the image description, and the image keyword. So now if I run this, then you'll just see the same things, but now in a more compressed list. And once you have this whole loop finished, then you can just plug it back into the loop over items node. And the whole output after this whole loop process will be available in this done branch. So here to continue with the whole 59 items processed, we do in fact have to unpin everything inside the loop and run everything as it is. So yes, this will take a couple of minutes because it'll analyze 59 images, but it's necessary to continue. So just unpin these nodes and click on execute workflow. And okay, everything just ran, and as you can see in the output of the loop over items node, we have 59 items. And if we go inside the loop over items node, then you can see that all of the images with their URL, description, and keyword are right here. So now it's time to send everything to OpenAI to pick the best images out of each category. And for this, we don't actually want to send OpenAI all of the 59 items one by one, because for it to compare everything, it needs to read them in one go. So again, we're going to use an aggregate node to just merge all of the 59 items into one item. So here, just set the setting as individual fields. And then for the fields to aggregate, you can just map in image info, because that's what contains the URL, the description, and the keyword. So just map image info into input field name and then click on test as step. And as you can see, all of the 59 images are now aggregated into just one item. And that's the exact item we'll send to OpenAI. So now please be sure to just pin this node, because we do not want to run this whole loop again. But then just add another node and search for OpenAI. Then click on the normal OpenAI one and select message a model. In this case, we're going to use the new model called GPT-4.1 mini. And for the prompt, we're simply going to tell it to pick the best images for each of the categories that we have. So here, just change the toggle from fixed to expression and paste in this prompt right here. So here I'm just telling it to read the list of images with their descriptions and keywords, to pick the 6th best ones and to reply as a JSON list, and that the first image will be the best one with the front house keyword, the second image will be the best with the keyword living room, and so on. Then I simply send it the whole list of the images with their URLs, keywords, and descriptions. And then I give it an example of how it will reply. In this case, it'll reply as a JSON. And this JSON list will just contain all of the image URLs that have been picked. So this first image URL will be the best image with the keyword front house. The second URL will be the best one with the living room keyword, and so on. So now to actually provide the list of the images, we just have to delete this expression and map in this one that we just aggregated. So if we just minimize this, you can see that all of the 59 images are right here. And the expression that contains all of those 59 images is called image info. So let's just put this right here. And as you can see, it just returns everything as an object, which is not what we want. And in order to change that, we just have to set this as a string, so as a text, because I think right now it's an array. So to do that, just put everything into parentheses, and to the left, just type in JSON.stringify. And now you can clearly see that the whole list of the 59 images with their URLs, description, and keywords are right here. And now we can just test this out. But before we do that, remember that we also specified that the output will be in a JSON list. So in the settings here, we also have to put output content as JSON and enable that. And now we can just test the step. And then if we scroll down a little bit, you'll see all of the 6 picked images right here. And to verify that it's working correctly, let's just put it in our browser. So this first image was for the front of the house according to our structure. So that's correct. Then the second image will be for the living room. So let's see if it actually has a living room, and that's correct. So the third image is this one. And in this case, it was for the kitchen. So let's just put it in our browser again. And indeed, this is a kitchen. Then for the fourth one, which was bedroom, let's just verify it again, and it's a bedroom. And for the fifth one, it was a bathroom. So let's check, and it is a bathroom. And the last one was for the backyard. So So let's see if it is, and it is the image that we already know. So now let's just pin this data and rename this to pick best images. And now for the next step is where we actually have to animate the images to turn them into videos. So for this, we actually need to process each image individually. And here this OpenAI node just output one item, but this item actually contains six parts. And that's the exact reason why we set the output as JSON. So now if we just select the split out node, and for the fields to split, we can just select that 6 images and we test this step. Then you see that it just separates each image URL into its individual item. And now that we have all of the best images separated and ready to go, then we can just use an API to animate them into a video. And as a lot of you may already know, there's a lot of tools and APIs to manipulate images or videos, but they're not really that affordable. For example, here we have Bannerbear, which starts at $49 a month. And we also have Creatomate, which starts at, again, $49 a month. And as you can see here, unlike the AI tokens that we normally use, like from OpenAI or Gemini, these prices are a bit far apart. But luckily for us, there's someone that created a pretty much free alternative, and his name is Stephen G. Pope. So if you haven't subscribed to him already, please check out his channel. He shares a bunch of stuff about make.com, N8N, and content automation, and he's a real genuine guy. And the solution that he provided is called the No-Code Architects Toolkit. And what this basically is, it's an API that has a bunch of functions. For example, for audio, you can concatenate multiple audio files together. You can execute Python code. You can use FFmpeg, which is a tool that allows you to manipulate videos. And lo and behold, I think it's probably the tool that works under the hood for Bannerbear and Creatomate. So if right now you use another tool that does any of these functions, then you can change right now to use the No-Code Architects Toolkit. And to give you some pricing references, well, it basically costed me nothing because as you can see here, from May 1, 2024 until May 31, 2025, it just spent 1 sol, which is around 30 American cents. So in conclusion, this is practically free and you don't really have to worry about pricing. The only, I'd say, downside of this API is that it's not as simple as just getting your API key and using it. You actually have to install it on your own Google Cloud project. And that would be a topic for another video, but in my case it took me around 30 minutes to install everything in my Google Cloud project, and it was the first time I was using Google Cloud. So it is a couple of steps, but it's totally worth it. I'll be leaving the exact tutorial that Steven created to set all of this up in the description, and once you do that you can just go back to this video to continue with our step-by-step tutorial. So okay, now that you're back, you can just add another HTTP request node. For the method, set it as post. Then for the URL, you can just put in the URL that the Google Cloud project provided for you. In my case, it looks something like this. Then for the authentication, you can just select generic credential type, then select the one that says header auth. And in my case, I already connected my Google Cloud account, but for you, you just have to create new credential. Then you can just name it NCA Toolkit. And for the name, just type in x-api-key. And here you just paste in your API key. So once you have that, then now we can just select what service we're gonna use. In this case, we wanna animate the image into a video with a zoom in effect. So if we check out the documentation, you can see that this is a specific endpoint that says transforms a static image into a video with custom duration and zoom effects. Well, this is the one that we're gonna use. So just click here to view more information. And for the endpoint, well, you just wanna copy the endpoint right here and copy it back into N8N. And you have to put it after your URL. So just paste it here and that's it. Then the next step will be to actually enable JSON. So here just enable send body. Specify body as using JSON. And then for the JSON, you can just copy the example that's right here for the example request. So here just change this toggle to expression and paste in that example from the documentation. And in this case, for the image URL, we can just delete this dummy URL and replace it with the one that we have just set up in the split node. Then for the length, in my case, I want each individual clip to last 5 seconds. So in total, since we have 6 parts, it'll be 6 times 5, which is 30 seconds long. But for the frame rate, I'm just gonna up it a bit to 30. Then for the zoom speed, I found 2 to be a good value. Then for the webhook URL, well, this is just to notify this webhook whenever it's finished. But in my case, I don't want that, so I'm just gonna delete it. Then just be sure that your JSON is formatted correctly, and we can just click on test a step. Then after a couple of seconds, you'll see all of the 6 items that are now in video format. So you can just check out this specific URL and let's see what it has inside. And as you can see, it's the image with a zoom in effect. So far everything is working perfectly. And while this is a really good result, I actually want the final video to be in vertical format. So to edit the video to be like that, then again we'll use the no-code architects toolkit. In this case, we'll use this endpoint called FFmpeg, which is pretty much a video editing tool. So now again here you can just copy and paste your node because we're using the same authentications. And in this case I'm just gonna rename it to change to vertical. And inside here the only thing you want to change is the endpoint. So now instead of converting an image to a video, we're just gonna use the FFmpeg endpoint, which is this one right here. So let's just copy this whole thing and delete the previous endpoint and paste it in. So now that we're using a different endpoint, we now need to use, of course, a different JSON. And in this case, the JSON request will look something like this. So yes, this is pretty complicated, but the good news is that just like programming, you can use AI to do it for you. In my experience, Grok is the best one that can actually output working JSON for this. So you can pretty much just send Grok this example request and tell it that it's a specific version of FFmpeg and that you want to do some changes to a video. In my case, I just told it that I want this video to be in vertical format, so 1080 by 1920, and that I want to position the video a bit on the top, and this is the exact JSON that it replied. As you can see, the video URL will just go here in the top. And in the filter part is where all of the magic happens, so where it sizes the video, where it changes the position, where it changes the aspect ratio and all of that. The only thing you would have to change is the file URL. So in this case, it's the input video, and we just have to map it from the image to video node that we just ran, and that's it. And also, I'm gonna be sharing all of these JSON parts from all of the no-code architects toolkit nodes that we're gonna use. So don't worry about this because you'll just be able to copy and paste it. But anyways, now let's actually click on test node. And as you can see here, after a couple of seconds, it just replies with everything. And again, let's just take in the first video, which is the front of the house, as an example. So it went from this to now this. As you can see, it's just formatted in vertical format with a white background and a bit positioned at the top. So that's exactly what we wanted, and that's pretty much everything for the first part of the automation, which is to pick the best images and transform them into video. So now we can just pin all of these nodes that we have just ran because they do take a bit of time and they do cost a little bit of money. And after that, we can just set in a set fields node. And here we'll just map all of the final video URLs because those are the ones that are coming from the best picked images and what we need to proceed with the next steps. So again, just map the output video URL from the last node and we can just click on test a step and you'll have all of the video URLs neatly prepared for the next steps. And okay, now before we move on to the second part, which is to create the text overlays, I'm also just gonna rename this into set video URLs and I'm just gonna separate it for visual purposes. And so far this is what we have. So now to proceed, we'll just disconnect this part and we'll just focus on creating the text overlays. And for this, we're just gonna use an OpenAI node, specifically the Messenger model one. And we're gonna select the new GPT 4.1 mini model. And for the prompt, we're just gonna give it the whole house information. So the amount of bedrooms, the amount of bathrooms, the description and all of that. And then we're gonna tell it to create 6 captions, each one for each category. So for example, for the kitchen, it might say marble countertops. For the bedroom, it might say 4 bedrooms and so on. So for the prompt, just change it to expression and I already have my prompt created. In my case, I'm just telling it to create some titles that will be overlaid on a video. Then I just give it the whole information, which I'm just gonna map in right here. So just be sure that you map all of the information correctly. And as you can see in the right, everything is mapped neatly and correct. And then I just tell it that it'll create 6 titles since the final video will consist on 6 clips scripts, which are these ones right here. And then I just specify that the first part will include a city and a state. The second part will just include an adjective for a living room, for example, beautiful living room. The third part will just include kitchen. The fourth one will just include the quantity of bedrooms, and so on. All of this depends on you. Then, just like last time, I tell it to output the response as a JSON format, and I give it this JSON structure. So now before you test the step, be sure to enable output content as JSON, and now you can just test the step freely. And then you'll see all of the titles created. For example, the first one is North Hollywood, California. So far so good. And now the only thing we have to change is that since it output just one item, we just have to split it into 6 items. So let's use the split node to split everything. And for the field to split out, we can just select titles right here and test the step. So now each text or title overlay is separated into individual items. And that's pretty much it. In this case, we can just pin this data. Then we can add a set fields node. So we can just add a field, name it text overlay, and map in the titles right here. Then if we click on test this step, now it'll just show the same thing, but in this case I just changed the title, and this is just to make everything more neater and organized. Then after that I just put it next to the other set nodes, and I'm just gonna name it set text overlays. And that's it for the second step. So now let's just disconnect this one to focus on the third part, which is to create the audio voiceovers. So again, here just add another OpenAI node. In this case, we first have to create the script for the voiceover. So we're just gonna select message a model. Again, we're just gonna use the GPT 4.1 mini model, and we're gonna put in a prompt just like this one. So I'm just telling it to create a short video voiceover for a real estate property house. Then I just send it all of the house information. So I'm just gonna remap all of this. And then I tell it that our script should consist on 6 parts, and that the length of each part should equal to 5 talking seconds, so maximum 10 words. And this is very, very important because if you remember well, our video animations were set as 5 seconds, so we do not want the voiceover to be cut off. So yes, that's why you put in these restrictions. And then you can just specify what each part will say. For example, in this case, the first part will just introduce the house with a fun fact about it. Then the second part will just highlight the living room. The third part will just highlight the kitchen. Like for example, here I'm just giving it some freedom. But yeah, and so on for the next part. And then for the final part of the prompt, I just send it some extra restrictions. And as usual, I tell it to output as a JSON structure. So now be sure to enable output content as JSON again and test this step. And then you'll be able to see all of the voiceover scripts for each of the parts. And now, just like before, it's set as one item, so we have to use the split out node to split all of these items. So in the fields to split, you just put in the script or whatever it's named, then just click on test this step. And now that each voiceover script is in its individual item, we can just add the text-to-speech tool, which in this case, again, will be from OpenAI, and it'll be the one to generate audio. And here, of course, if you also want to use other tools like 11 Labs, then it's totally fine. It's totally up to you. But in this case, I'm just using the OpenAI TTS HD model. But then here for the text input, you can just put in the voiceover generated script. So it's this one right here. Then you can also select a specific voice. In my case, I'm just gonna leave it as Alloy, and you can also add some extra options, for example the audio speed. In my case I find it a bit slow, so that's why I just speed it up a bit to 1.1. And then since this output will be in binary format, I'm just gonna add another option to put output in field and to just name it data, and this will just help with mapping things down the road. And now that you have all of that, before actually testing this node, then be sure to pin any other nodes that take a bit of time or costs money, and then just test the step. And after a couple of seconds, you'll see all of the generated audio voiceovers in binary format. So now let's just pin all of this again. And while binary format is really cool, we actually have to transform this into URL format. Because later on, when again we're using the no-code architects toolkit, it doesn't really accept binary format. So we would just have to send in a URL. So for this, we're just gonna use Google Drive to get the URLs. So just search for Google Drive, then select upload file. And here, just be sure that the input data field name is set as data, and that's why we put in data in the previous step. And then for the file name, that's just how it's going to be named in Google Drive. So in this case, I'm just going to put in generated audio, and then just select a folder in which you want to save everything. In my case, I have this folder prepared right here, and as you can see, I already have a bunch of audios right here from past tests, but you can just set this folder as public and then copy the URL, and here in the parent folder option, just change it from list to by URL and paste in your URL right here. So now just click on test as step. And unfortunately, it looks like we got an error. And I'm pretty sure this is a bug because it says the node expected the input data to contain a binary file data. But in this case, we do have it as data. And what I found out is that it's probably because you pinned the last node. So just unpin it. And now you can just test the step again. Now here is just executing the previous nodes because we just unpinned it. And then it looks like it's actually executing this Google Drive node. So apparently everything is working. So now all of the audios that we have just generated are uploaded into our Google Drive folder. So just to double check, I'm gonna refresh this folder. And as you can see, the new ones that are called generated audio are right here. And since we have the ID, then we can now actually create a URL. So now we can just pin this node and also pin this other one right here again. And then add a set fields node and add a field and set it as audio URL. And then to create the actual URL with the ID, then just change this to expression and paste this specific part of a URL and just map in the ID after the equal sign. So now you would have your audio URL. Now let's just test this step. And you can see that all of the audios now have their URL. So now let's just change this node to set audio URLs and place it with the other ones. Okay, so now we're super close to finishing, and now the last part we need to do is to actually merge the title and overlay it on the video and overlay that audio voiceover on the video. And then once we have all of those 6 final individual clips, then we can just concatenate or stitch all of those clips into one final video and optionally add some music. So let's do that right now and select the merge node. In this case, we want 6 items and each item to contain the video URL, the text overlay, and the audio URL. So for the mode, just change it to combine, then change it to combine by position. And since we have 3 inputs, let's just set it as 3, and that's it. But before we actually click on test as step, then we just have to connect all inputs into the node. And now we have to wire up all of the previous parts. So just reconnect these nodes and these ones right here. And to avoid running this loop again and again and again, we can just disconnect the loop from the flow. Because if you think about it, the only thing we want is the actual aggregated list. So we can just skip this loop since we already have the aggregated list as pinned. And we can just connect this back here. And we can just click on save and now test the merge node. And it just ran, so let's check what's inside. And apparently we have 2 runs and it doesn't show anything, so this is pretty weird, but I think this is a bug again. Here you can just test the step again. And as you can see, now it outputs all of the 6 items with the video URLs, text overlays, and audio URLs. Okay, and now that we have merged all of these items, then we can use the no-code architects toolkit again to use the FFmpeg endpoint to overlay the text on the video and to overlay the audio on the video. So for that, just select the loop over items node, and inside the loop just replace this node with a HTTP request. And actually we can just copy it from the last FFmpeg call we did, which is this one. So just Ctrl+C to copy it and Ctrl+V to paste it, and we can just plug it in the loop. So here it's called change to vertical, so I'm just gonna rename it to add text overlay, and I'm gonna unpin this previous data. And inside, the only thing we wanna change is this JSON part. So in this case, this JSON was just to make the video vertical, but in our case, we want to overlay the text. So that's why I prepared this JSON, which overlays some text, and it also overlays a logo. And again, you can just ask Grok to give you this JSON, but I'll still be sharing this in the description, so don't worry about that. But for the input URL, we just have to put in the URL that we got from the merged list. So here, just click on execute previous nodes, and now you can map in the video URL here and the text overlay right here. So just map it there. And then you can also probably see this extra file URL, and this is for the actual image or logo that will overlay. In this case, it's this one right here. And this is very simple to do. You just upload an image to your Google Drive, then just change the permissions to anyone can see. To get the ID, you just have to select your image, click on share, click on copy link, and then paste that link somewhere else. And now from this URL, then this is the actual ID. So just replace that previous ID with this new one. And now we can actually test the step on this add text and images overlay node. And boom, as you can see now, it successfully created the video. So let's just copy that URL into our browser. And as you can see, it successfully added the text overlay and the image overlay. So far, so good. And now let's just add the other node, which was to overlay the audio. So I'm just gonna copy and paste this node, rename it to add audio overlay. And in here, you don't have to change anything apart from the JSON. So just delete this one, which was to add the visuals. And now you can just use this one, which will again be available in the description. So for the first input URL, remember that it's the one from the latest node, which is this one. So just map that in. And then for the second input URL, it's actually the audio. So go back to the loop over items node. And here you can just map in the audio URL, which is this one. And now let's just click on test this step. And boom, now you'll have the final individual clip. So let's just check if everything is okay. And boom, you probably can't hear the audio because I disabled audio for the recording, but it's working and that voiceover is successfully overlaid on the video. So now that we have that, we can just unpin this and just loop this back again. And now, just like in the last loop, we actually have to run everything. So delete everything and make sure that all of your previous information was pinned and test the workflow. So now just wait for all of the 6 items to pass through the loops so the text and audio overlays can be added on top of it. And the loop just finished running, and if we check the loop over items node done branch, you can see that all of the final individual videos are successfully finished. So now the next step is to stitch all of those clips into one final video and to add some music on top of it. So for that, we're just going to use an aggregate node to combine all of those items into one single item. So here, just select individual fields in the aggregate option, and in input field name, just put in the file URL right here. Now click on test as step, and you'll see all of the URLs in one single item. So now to continue, just pin this aggregate node and again disconnect this loop, because what matters here is the aggregate node, and we'll connect this loop over items node back again when we finish the workflow and testing. And after this, we can just use another HTTP request. And while the No-Code Architects Toolkit does have a dedicated endpoint to concatenate videos, I found out that it doesn't really work well because it merges the audios incorrectly. So for this reason, we'll still use the FFmpeg endpoint. So just copy this node that used FFmpeg and paste it here and connect it after the aggregate node. Then just rename this to concatenate videos. And inside, you don't have to change anything because we're still using the FFmpeg endpoint like I mentioned. And just delete this previous JSON and paste in this new one right here. In this case, I just asked Grok that I wanted to combine videos using FFmpeg and it gave me this. But of course, I'll also include it in the description so you can just copy and paste it. But as you can see, in this first file URL, I just mapped in this first video URL. Then for the second one, I just mapped the second one right here, and so on for all of the 6 individual final clips. So after that, you can just test this step. And after a couple of seconds, it finished running, and let's check the response URL. And boom, as you can see, it lost 30 seconds, which is 5 seconds times the 6 clips. And it merged everything neatly together with the voiceovers neatly structured. And I know that right now you won't be able to hear anything, so I'll include this URL in the description so you can check it out for yourself. But this is a really great result. And now for the last node to add some music on top of it, we can just copy this FFmpeg node and paste it here and connect it. And in this case, I'm gonna rename it to add music. Then I'm gonna pin the previous node. And inside this new node, I just keep everything as it is. And the only thing I change is the JSON. So here for the first URL, you just map in the URL that came from that concatenate videos node, which is this one right here. So that's the input video. Then for the second URL, it's actually the music URL. So just set in this first part of the URL. And after the equal sign is where your ID will go. So in my case, I have my song right here. In this case, it's in a public folder. So to get the ID, you just click on share, copy link, paste it into your browser. And this number right here is the actual ID. So just copy it and paste it right here. Again, this whole JSON will be available in the description. So once you run this, it'll actually add the music. And after a couple of seconds, it just finished running. So let's check the output URL. And here it's just the same video, but now with the added music. Again, I'll be including this specific video URL in the description so you can hear for yourself. And yes, that would be the final note for this pretty big workflow right here that creates a real estate showcase video from just a property URL. So this is a really cool way of implementing AI and automation into content creation and marketing. And I also want to thank one of my clients that gave me this idea. And remember that if you want this exact workflow for you to just download and copy into your N8N, then it'll be available in our AI agent and automation library in our new Skool community. Remember that right now we have a limited offer until 100 members. So if you really want to get into AI and automation and N8N, then I highly recommend you to join. And if you really liked this video, then be sure to check out my previous videos, which are very similar, and subscribe to not miss out on any other videos that I post in the near future. If you have any questions or feedback, please let me know in the comments. I'm really grateful for over 3,000 subscribers. I really appreciate everyone that supports me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.